It's International Labor Day. Did you know that the famous 888 symbol represents 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest, the ideal working conditions that workers have been fighting for? In Europe, the lily of the valley is associated with May Day as a symbol of good fortune and hope. And the famous red color is a symbol of the blood shed by workers in their struggle for better working conditions and rights. Here's to equal treatment for all at work. Welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we're positive, daring, different. On the show today, the reality of revisiting the past and human rights, going beyond the tariffs and reliving Sigiriya with the magic of virtual reality. Did you know Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn? Remember to subscribe, follow, and like us for more. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts to our wonderful partners of the show, Srilanka Live, CDB, and The Daily Morning.
She wins with CDB Wings, exclusive financial solutions for women.
Looking back at the week that was on CDB Snapshot, Sri Lanka has begun 2025 on a positive note. In January, state revenue increased by over 22% year-on-year to 346.6 billion rupees. And the budget deficit decreased to 119.4 billion rupees from last year's 106.9 billion. The world's largest container ship, the MSC Mariella, holding over 24,200 containers and the largest vessel to ever call at a Sri Lankan port, docks in Colombo. Public and semi-government sector employment in Sri Lanka tops 1.15 million. 4 men called the Cutthroat Cowboys are caught riding their emotional support horses through Walmart.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. With the enactment of the US executive order on reciprocal tariffs, Sri Lanka now faces a 44% tariff on all goods exported to the US. A delegation has been to the US to negotiate on what could be quite challenging times ahead. In this light, Sri Lanka needs to shift focus as well. How do we mitigate the fallout? How do we leverage what we have? And how do we adjust our trade orientation? Shivling scholar and trade policy enthusiast Michael Jayawardena has some insights to share. Are we missing the point when it comes to the US tariff?
A lot of people think this is some kind of sanction, some kind of penalty on Sri Lanka. Actually, it's not the case. So this is a global rollout of what President Trump calls as reciprocal tariffs. So he has a very basic formula where he looks at the trade balance, and if you fall within the trade balance and if it's skewed towards us in a sort of a positive manner, then we fall into that category. So you could be any country in the world, and we unfortunately got caught at 44% due to the apparel industry and some of the other industries that we have in terms of exporting to the US. So this is definitely not a sanction, but I think it's more or less an opportunity for us to recalibrate, if you ask me.
What are the lessons learned?
I have 3 points on that, and if we can come up with a framework on these 3 points, I think Sri Lanka can make this a win-win situation. First, I think, is the immediate diplomatic engagement, I think, which we are doing right now. You go there, you speak to them and see what can be negotiated on. Second is to provide them data on what kind of products we are sending to the US and what kind of American inputs are in those products that we are sending. So data-driven approach is important. So I think holistically we need to show the US, in addition to apparel, which has certain amount of US inputs, there are many other products which are from US origin companies, but which comes to Sri Lanka through other countries. Third step is long-term engagement. You come up with a platform where US becomes your friend in terms of looking at Sri Lanka as more of a long-term trade partner. So Sri Lanka plays a part in exporting to the countries in the region, maybe even US made products. So how do we come into that platform, and how do we negotiate certain trade deals? So for example, if you take India, they're working on a zero tariff mechanism for cotton. And Sri Lanka, being a apparel manufacturing country, could piggyback on that. So there are certain platforms we need to look at in the long term and recalibrate our trade networks and what we offer. So if you look at these 3 steps in the next 5 to 6 years, I think we are good to go.
What are we doing right now?
Even if Sri Lanka offers zero tariffs, still based on the flat 10%, I think my approximation is maybe 10 to 15%. There will be some type of tax on us, even if you have a 0%. So I think we shouldn't just offer the 0%. I think we should offer maybe a certain percentage plus how we can work in the US in terms of giving them visibility on what we can do. So I think we are on the right track right now, but we need to build on it and make the negotiations as simple as possible.
The deficit is large. Is there any way that we can sort of narrow it down?
A lot of people think, how can US expect countries like Sri Lanka, which has such a massive deficit, to narrow it down, right? Trump's objective is to make it zero, but you can't do it. So this is a negotiation tactic by Trump. He puts out the most difficult objective out first, hoping the countries will come to him for negotiations, which actually is what has happened, right? So I don't think there's a real expectation to make or really narrow the deficit, which we can't do. But I think he wants some kind of commitment and some kind of fair play in terms of trade. So that's the objective here.
And here's what's up with our markets this week.
At the Colombo Stock Exchange, the all-share price index remained flat, even as daily turnover levels increased slightly to above 2 billion rupees. Oil prices dropped to one-year lows of $60 per barrel, with trade war concerns dampening the demand outlook. After hitting record highs this year, gold seems to be settling down to levels of $3,300 per ounce. This follows an announcement by US President Donald Trump that he may ease tariffs on auto imports. The World Press Photo Award winners were revealed recently, and the results are truly heartbreaking and breathtaking at the same time. With me today is literary and legal superstar Philippe Sands, an international lawyer, professor, and author renowned for his expertise in international law, particularly in human rights and genocide. His works, including East West Street and The Rat Line, have gained international recognition for their profound exploration of legal and historical narratives. Philippe's upcoming 38 Londres Street delves into the chilling connections between Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet and senior SS officer Walter Rauff, and I caught up with him at the Gaul Literary Festival this year. How are you seeing the world currently in the context of human rights and genocide?
Not well. Plainly, there are many, many challenges. We have conflicts in Sudan, in Ukraine and Russia, in Palestine and Israel, and we now have a new president in the United States who seems hell-bent on ripping up the world's rule-based system with human rights at the epicenter of his target, along with all the rules on climate change. So difficult times ahead.
When it comes to human rights, do you think there is a right and a wrong in times of war?
So the issue with human rights is it has to be put in the context of societal actions and inactions generally. As you know from my book East-West Street, I focused on this remarkable moment in 1945 when for the first time states came together and said that the power of the state is not unlimited and that international law protects the rights of individuals, crimes against humanity, and groups, the crime of genocide. And they made clear that war does not allow you to deviate from the fundamental precepts of humanity, namely to distinguish between civilian targets and military targets. We see the attacks of the 7th of October in Israel, children, the elderly, women being executed. We see, in consequence to that, the terrible crimes perpetrated against civilians, children, women, the elderly in Gaza, huge numbers of deaths, totally disproportionate to the military objectives. What do we do in those circumstances? we resist. We point out the wrongs that are happening, the crimes that we believe to be occurring, and the story of human rights is that it is a long game, and we just bat on.
You mentioned Gaza, you mentioned Israel. How do you see Gaza and Israel right now?
In a very difficult situation. As you may know, I was counsel for the Palestinian Authority in an important case at the International Court of Justice on the right of self-determination of the Palestinians, essentially saying there's a right to Palestinian statehood, something I passionately believe in today, not in a few years, not the subject of a negotiation, now. And I find myself in a delicate and difficult position. I have family in Israel. I have Palestinian friends. My guiding star has always been to feel empathy for anyone who is on the wrong side of abuse and horror, irrespective of identity, nationality, ethnicity, orientation, and so on and so forth. And I just stick to the fundamental principles, the rule of law, the settlement of 1945, and again, we just bat on. But it's plain, particularly in recent days, with some of the statements, terrible statements, by President Trump about essentially removing an entire population, 2 million people, from the territory of Gaza and sending them where? I dealt with this in my book, The Last Colony, on the Chagos Archipelago, not so far from where we are, Mauritius and the Indian Ocean. You can't remove people from their homes, period. There's no ifs and buts. It's wrong. It's prohibited. It's a crime. It cannot happen. The world has to resist.
What do you see of Sri Lanka and how human rights has panned out in times of war and peace?
And one of the things that I've picked up from now 40 years of involvement in the world of international crimes and wars and conflicts is say nothing is not an option. These things can't be buried under the carpet. You have to find a way to address what has happened in the past. It could be court proceedings. It could be transitional justice. It could be literature. But you can't simply pass in silence on what has happened. This is the beating heart of my book, East-West Street. I open it with a line from a couple of Hungarian psychoanalysts who say, what we are haunted by is the secrets of others. Silence comes back to bite us. At some point, Sri Lanka must, like any society, find a way to address what has happened.
Sigiriya is mystical and magical. This 5th century rock fortress created by Kashyapa, who built his capital on the top of this rock, is renowned for its architectural marvels and amazing frescoes. While the rock today holds with it that mystical splendor, don't you want to know what it actually looked like in the 5th century? Fascinated by Sri Lanka's history, young entrepreneur Harin Wickramasinghe wanted to recreate everything about Sigiriya that held him spellbound as a child. And Sigiriya VR was born.
Sigiriya has an incredible story which the world just doesn't know about yet. And our business, what we try to do is we try to ignite a flame on a story which people don't know about yet. I think one of the greatest challenges we faced is probably the reconstruction, as there is not so many artifacts left. However, what we did do is we took all the artifacts that are in Sigiriya Museum, reconstructed them digitally, and beyond that, we started to look more so at Anuradhapura and Polonnaruwa just after Sigiriya's time period.
The Sigiriya VR booth is at the Cinnamon Grand lobby. All you have to do is hop on over, and in just 10 minutes, the beauty of Sigiriya will unfold right in front of your eyes.
As we were reconstructing Sigiriya, we did continue to add on to it more and more and more. As you start to build this world, you see opportunities to add more. When you understand what the lifestyle was like and you have a foundation already, that's when you can integrate lifestyle choices into the build as well.
So what happens after Sigiriya?
We're working on a Polonnaruwa project during King Parakrambahu's time period to highlight Sri Lanka's culture. And the second project we're running is Gaul, and we're going to focus on the Dutch period, focusing on the spice trade.
Take some time off, relax, and unwind. We will see you next week.